Hi, welcome to one more episode of Zindagi Ka Safar. And we have joining us all the way from Gurgaon, Anand Suspi. And there is a reason why I seem to be wearing a jacket in this hot weather. Uh, and that is basically because what you see at the background is the get together which we had for our MBA batchmate, which is around 6 years back. And this was a 20th. And when we looked around people, there were uncles like me, and there were cool dudes like Suspi or Anand, as we call him. So I had to be little bit trying to say that, okay, I was not his teacher in the class. I was also his batchmate. Yeah. Okay, so having said that, okay, let's try to hear about Suspi. So tell us a little bit about your Zindagi Ka Safar with us.
Tuhin, firstly, thanks for having this, inviting me to have a chat with you. And that's all rubbish, yeah, uncle versus whatever. We're all more or less, somebody looks a little, somebody's lost a bit of hair, somebody's got a paunch, somebody seems okay, but we're all there, yeah. We're all hitting 50 and, thereabouts. So, so where do I start from, Tuhin? It's been, it's been 25 years since we passed out.
So I think it will be very interesting because if you can maybe share a little bit with all of us about your growing up, because that has been a very interesting thing which we'll also discuss later on. So a little bit about your growing up, where did you grow up, and your education maybe till TAPME, and then you can move on to the different kinds of work which you have done.
Thanks, Tuhin. Firstly, thanks a lot for having me on this chat. And like you said, maybe a good starting point is, my childhood and where I grew up. Yeah, it was actually in a small town, which is very close to Manipal. In fact, maybe about 150, 160 kilometers from Manipal, a town called Shimoga in Karnataka. So my father was a railway guard. So I grew up there, spent the first 18 years of my life there. So the entire schooling till first year of college was in Shimoga, and grew up in the railway colony. An absolutely gorgeous childhood. And this is on hindsight. Okay, so see, when you're growing up as a kid, you don't think that you're, it's a beautiful phase of life. You don't feel it. Okay?
Yes.
But it's when you grow up and when you look back on hindsight, you imagine, that phase was just so beautiful. And here's one interesting thing, Tuhin, and I'm sort of veering off a bit from where we started, but I'll come back. But this is it. I've imagined that pretty much everyone, except for the unfortunate ones. I'm not talking about that. There are people who have really bad childhoods. I'm not talking about them. But for most regular people, I would imagine that childhood is the most phenomenal, beautiful phase of life. And I still think that's true. That's my perspective. But, I heard a contra perspective from Balki, who was the filmmaker and who used to be the chairman of Lintas, and he was my boss for many years, an absolute living legend who's got a contra perspective on most things in life. I remember once long back, Balki was telling me, man, how did you seem to have had such a glorious childhood? My childhood was rubbish. And that's the first time I heard. Okay? So I don't know what is the correct thing. I would assume that most people would think that they've had a fantastic childhood. Coming back to the point, I had an absolutely gorgeous childhood. Every week, every fortnight was a new discovery, new adventures. Nothing big really happens in childhood. It's all about little things. But those little things are so big when you're a kid that there is so much joy, so much imagination, so much curiosity. It's beautiful. And I was decently well at studies. And therefore, I didn't have the, one of the big part of childhood stress is academics. I was decently studies, and therefore, so that stress didn't exist. So life was beautiful. So when Dad retired, when I was about 18, then he decided to settle down in Mysore. So that's where I moved. In fact, one of our batchmates, very close friend, he's my childhood friend, Deepak Shetty. Both of us used to be together in Shimoga. In the same year, at the same point, both of us moved to Mysore. His family and my family moved to Mysore. And I finished my first year BBM in Shimoga, and Shetty and I were in the same college. We finished our graduation in Mysore. And from there, both of us moved to Manipal. So, so this is the point till getting to Manipal. Yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. I think that's the time when I met you. And though we were in different sections, and I think the interactions which we had was much lesser, because being in different section, plus I think you were specializing in marketing where I was doing into finance. But what I remember and recall is you were always someone who was very, very creative, or that's what I realized in the few interactions or the cultures which was there. So was getting into the line which is creative, specifically in advertising, was that your first choice after completing your PGDM from TAPME, or it just happened like that?
No, it's strange. I think I honestly didn't know what advertising meant. My first love in first year of college was journalism.
Oh,
From the time I was in, I think, middle school,
uh,
I had this vague notion without really knowing what it entailed. But I was kind of very clear that I wanted to be in the writing field from the time I was in middle school. Uh, because I used to write some juvenile poetry. I was always fascinated with words, on and so forth. A lot of people are not clear even till much later in life what is it that they want to do. Since I was kind of half decent in studies, the typical thing, the parents think is become an engineer, become a doctor or an engineer, which is the whole zeitgeist of the 70s, 80s, till the 90s. Yes. But I was very clear, anything to do with science and stuff like that is not my thing. I always wanted to be in any field that had to do with writing. Journalism was the first love, but then I didn't have much knowledge. There was nothing back then. I couldn't figure out the right college, on and so forth. And MBA again was more of sort of fallback mechanism. You probably do this so that you're at least the notion of you've got this qualification and you can get something. But when I was in TAPME, even from day one, I was absolutely clear. Though I didn't know exactly what advertising meant, I knew it's about writing ads that come on TV, and one has to be good at words and concepts and ideas. But I was absolutely clear that's the only thing I did. In fact, I have to tell you this. I don't know whether you know this. When our placements were happening, I think there were only 5 or 6 people in our batch, who were into, wanted to get into advertising. Okay. In a batch of 89 or 93, by the time we passed out, I think there were 5 or 6 of us. And only 3 agencies came on campus. And I think in our batch, pretty much everyone would have gone for a second interview. Would have had one and then gone for a second interview. I was so bloody clear about advertising that I didn't sit for a single placement interview, and the agencies came right at the end. It was day 28 or something. I think 2% of the batch had been placed. Okay, I had still not sat for the interview because I didn't want to sit for anything else. And I was punting this, of course, our very dear professor, Shivram. He had told me that Sista and Mudra and a couple of them will come and you should get through. But I really punted, and my father was very, very anxious, saying that, after doing all this. So I was damn clear about advertising from day one in TAPME. And finally Mudra came and I joined them on campus.
So your initial assignment in Mudra, did you start more from a client servicing, or you were able to directly move into your passion, which was copywriting? Or
no, that's the other strange bit, because always wanted to be in the creative department, but didn't have much knowledge. And back then, Mudra was one of the few agencies which actually, there are very different filters and parameters and hiring processes for the creative department and for the client servicing department. Okay? Client servicing department, obviously, all the big agencies need an MBA, so on and so forth. But Mudra was actually a different organization. So they picked up, that year, they picked up 23 people from, I think, 8 or 9 different institutes, MBA institutes. And on day one, each one of us had the option of either being in client servicing, media planning, or in creative, which doesn't happen in any other agency. Media planning and client servicing is understandable because you need similar kind of qualification and whatever. But creative is a very different mindset. It requires a different kind of skill, etc. Creative people don't get hired like this. In fact, there's no qualification for a copywriter. But Mudra had this thing. And we were doing this 3-month orientation in Ahmedabad. And they gave us this choice. And after wanting to be in a field that has to do with creative, that minute when I had to fill in the form and, tick the department and the city and whatever else, I remember those 5-6 minutes, I just could not decide. Instead of taking creative, I finally said, I have now invested 2 years in an MBA, in doing my MBA, and therefore I should be in client servicing. So I got into servicing.
Oh, okay.
And I was still not sure. And once I started work, by the second week, I realized I'd made this mistake. Okay? I said, I don't like client servicing. I don't want to. Of course, the other things are also interesting, brands and, strategy and, back then, writing decks and research and consumer insights, all of which, most of us had studied, had the interesting subjects, but that was not my field. Why the second week I realized this is not my cup of tea. I need to move to creative. But then in the advertising industry or most creative fields, this is the other thing. If you walk in fresh and say, I want to be in the creative department, depending on whether you're a designer or a writer, there is a different, whatever filter, somebody will give you a copy test and there's some way of judging you. You'll get accepted easily. But you spend one day in client servicing, then you're bracketed as a client servicing person. It then took me 2 years to shift from servicing to creative. Every 3 months, I would go up to the top man and say that, cut my salary, let me restart. I need to move there. But it took me 2 years, but finally I did,
Okay, that's a very interesting insight. And I think maybe for youngsters who are watching this show, this can be something that you need to be very, very clear about some of these choices, because we say, choices will keep on coming. But eventually, did you feel that that 2 years helped you understand it much better, because you were able to, I think, interact with the customers, and which is, I think, going to be a key, because if you had maybe directly gone into client servicing, you would have missed out on that bit about what does the client really want many times.
Honestly, no.
No,
there's one thing that any experience is good experience. It will come handy somewhere. But in this specific case, if you ask me, those 2 years of course, I learned a lot, a whole lot of things there, like making presentations and, writing decks, so on and so forth. Quite a bit of learning. And I'm sure some of it sort of added up later on. But if you honestly, I have to be very honest about it, I would have been fine if I'd moved straight into creative.
Straight into that. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. So, though you have spent 25 years of your career in different a few organizations which is there, why don't you tell us a little bit about the organization where you are? Because I understand that's something which you have started, and where do you focus, and is there any niche about the organization where you're working with now?
I'll tell you, I run my own small agency now in Gurgaon. I spent maybe about 16, 17 years working with the big agencies. I started with Mudra and spent a lot of my career with Lintas. But I quit almost 10 years ago. Now in Gurgaon, I run my own small advertising agency with a couple of other partners, which has its own set of challenges. To be honest, again, there is nothing different or niche or anything. We have our own set of clients. We pretty much do what the big agencies do. Okay. But we are obviously, it's our own little thing. It's not a name that most people would know. I think beyond the 3 partners, employees, and our CA, nobody would even know the name of the agency. It's like that. But it's fine. We've got a set of clients and we do our work, which is the same as.
Okay, that's wonderful. So, another very interesting aspect of you has been, and I think you have mentioned about it, that you were always interested in writing. So finally, we were very fortunate that you wrote your first book, Half Pant, Full Pant, which was there. So tell us about, was the story something in your mind all throughout, and how did you go about from the conceptual to the writing part, and how easy or difficult was it to publish in the end?
Okay. That's an interesting question, Tuhin. Like I said, I always wanted to be a writer, but then, once you start your career, of course, I ended up being a writer, but I ended up being a specific kind of a writer, which is copywriting, which is advertising writing. So every sphere of writing, while the sense, finally, it's all about ideas and words and imagery. Every sphere has its own, it requires a different skill set to do different kinds of writing. Journalism is different, advertising is different, screenplay is different, poetry is different, so on and so forth. So while growing up, I used to write some juvenile poetry, I used to write some articles and short stories, and I thought I always wanted to be a writer. But 18, 19 years of advertising, increasingly, one day, that first book was completely accidental. Of course, I had lots of stories in my mind. Not any different from anybody else's childhood. They're all the same stories. Everyone in the world grows up with very similar kinds of stories. And I used to, back in Lintas with a whole lot of colleagues and counterparts, we would sit and, talk about childhood, so on and so forth. And different people would say their stories. I remember some of them over years saying that, man, you've got such wonderful stories, you should write them. Okay. Those stories were not any different or anything. It's pretty much the same that everyone's done. Maybe because, there was this whole, in Bombay, there was this whole South Indian small town kind of flavor. I think what made the stories a little richer. Beyond that, they were the same kind of stories. When I actually started writing, for 15, 16 years of my life, I realized, and in advertising, as you don't write long content in advertising.
Yeah.
And beyond a point, and as you go up the pecking order slowly, you start out by doing what we call the grunt work, which is writing brochures, so on and so forth. But a lot of it is technical and something, your only imagination or curiosity or your perspective is about writing a headline. Otherwise, you're writing television commercials, which is 30 seconds, and you're writing, print ads and magazine ads or hoardings and stuff like that. You're not writing it. That form of writing. You're doing a very commercial form of writing. And so one day I was sitting at home, and like I said, it was accidental. I didn't set out to write a book. I had lost confidence in myself. I was not sure at all. I was 99% sure that I will not be able to write more than 2 pages. So I actually sat down to test myself after all these years. Can I write 2 or 3 pages? So that's where it started. And then, like it typically happens, once you sit down, the very next question is, what the hell do you write about? So I was groping for a topic for almost about half an hour, 45 minutes. And then some childhood story came to my mind. And I said, okay, let me start with this. That's how it started. And before I realized, all the stories, one after the other, they kept tumbling out, and I kept on writing. So that's how that book happened. But once the book was finished, and long before it got published, like I said, Balki used to be, he was the big boss, and I was just one of the people under him. Like me, there was scores of us in Lintas. I just happened to share it with Balki, saying that, for once I've written something other than advertising. And that man, that's the beauty of him, that man handles about 1 trillion, megabytes of work at any given point. And he said, okay, send me. I sent him first 2 stories, and he said, and this is even as I was writing. And they were short stories. And he said, Suspi, what the fuck are you doing in advertising? This is your calling. This is phenomenal. Sorry, Tuhin, just one thing here. I'll come back to what I was saying. In this particular episode of Zindagi Ka Safar, you will probably have a little extra work. You will have to beep me out a few times.
Anyway, I write the contents are not suitable for kids and also. It's okay.
So anyway, so that Balki's initial thing was there, and a few other people, my colleagues, etc., they said this is wonderful. That just gives you encouragement, because all of them are phenomenal writers themselves, phenomenal advertising writers. Everyone is so well read because this is advertising, and you're talking about the cream of talent in a place like Lintas and other agencies. When they all turned around and said, this is beautiful writing, that sort of gave me encouragement, and I continue to write till I put down my entire childhood, from LKG up to class 12. So that book got divided into half pants, which is from LKG to class 7, and full pants from 8 to 12. Post which, and this is the reality, and this is, it is frustrating for anybody. Because there are many filters to it. Okay? It took me 4 years to find a publisher. And at the end of it, I still didn't get a publisher. Okay? you read about it. Even the biggest of names and the best of names, when they start out, you keep getting rejected, multiple times. So, which is the thing, for 4 years I kept trying. I sent it, everyone rejected, and then nobody wanted to pick it up. And ultimately, that first book, I still didn't get a publisher. It was fine. After 4 years, I was on the verge of saying that, okay, let me sort of self-publish it. But then one sort of freak thing happened. Somebody, gave me this idea saying, why don't you approach Paperboat? Because the book was all about childhood memories and nostalgia. And somebody said, the brand is all about that. So maybe they might be interested. But they're in the business of selling drinks. They're not a publishing house. I sort of cold called one of the founders, a most wonderful guy, not because he's done this book, generally. I think one of the beautiful human beings I've met, that's Neeraj Kakkar of Paperboat. I cold called him. I said that, there is this strange thing. You have written some stories, it carries the essence of your brand. So would you be interested in reading the stories? He read 2 stories and he said, I just love the stories. Forget whatever else. I'm not a publisher, but I want more people to read it. So I'm going to publish this book. And so that's how that happened. But it took 4.5 years after writing for it to come out.
So I think after the book came, you had a reasonable amount of success. Specifically, your known people, most of them would have read it. So why have you not moved to the next book? Or do you have anything planned, or are you writing something already?
Yeah, let me qualify that first statement before I come to that. That success is very relative. To be honest, if you ask me to, I guess the book was a sleeper hit. Most people don't know about the book. Most people haven't read it. Having said that, going by the publishing industry numbers and so on and so forth, I think the book has done sort of fairly well. But so I'm still not, nobody really knows me. Nobody really knows the book. All of that is there. A few people who've heard of it. Beyond that, I don't think it's really reached. But having said that, but that's how it is, because then there are too many factors and you just don't know, what combination hasn't worked, so on and so forth, which is fine. But the thing is, but a lot of people who've read the book, a lot of them have compared it with Malgudi Days. So even now, once in a while, from somewhere, it's been 5 years since the book came out. But even now, maybe once a month, I'll get a mail from somebody from the Northeast, somebody from Delhi, Punjab, so on and so forth. From a 16-year-old to a 60-year-old saying that, the book took them back to their own childhood and they vibe with everything. So that feels good. I mean, that's the real reward here, because honestly, there is no other reward, which feels good. No, then the second book, I had an idea about 4 years ago. For 3.5 years, I kept thinking of it. I just didn't know how to write that. Last year, during the pandemic, not because of the pandemic. In fact, after 3.5 years of struggling on how to write that book, I finally got it after 3.5 years and I started writing. So I finished writing my second book, which has nothing to do with the first book. It's fiction. And I'm very, very happy with the way it's turned out. But it is the same struggle again. And
to get the publisher.
To get a publisher. Of course, now there is one book under the belt, and therefore things should be slightly easier. That's what conventional logic says. But till now, it's not been so. It's not been so. The struggle continues to find a publisher. So I'm hoping that in about a year's time, the second book should be out. But from my side, it's sort of done.
So we'll definitely look forward to that book coming out, and hopefully it's much earlier than that 1 year timeline which you're talking about. So one more very interesting aspect or talent, as I should say, of yours is you rap. Yeah? So again, my curiosity is more from coming from a smaller city like Simoga. Where did you get interested and what stage in life? And according to me, it's a very difficult art form. Yeah. So how easy is it to sing a rap compared to maybe just singing a like Zindagi Ka Safar? If you want to sing a Kishore Kumar Zindagi Ka Safar, we can very easily sing that. But I think rapping that will be the challenge.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a topic. Thanks for asking this question. But I'll tell you, it's it's an interesting interesting. It actually goes back to words. Some childhood fetish for words that I've always had, it actually goes back there. Okay? And I'll come to the genre. It's a damn interesting genre. Currently, that's like my obsession. But some of my friends now, they pull my leg and say that, suddenly. But in rap, of course, there are many parts to it. In the last 3 years, post Gully Boy, so on and so forth, there's this huge rap hip hop revolution sort of happening in India. To be honest, I can't write a song. I have no music understanding of music. It's very base level. I don't understand. I can't write. I can write prose. I can't write verse. Okay, so and singing is, I can't sing to save my life. So all three parts, I'm as regular a Joe as most people are when it comes to these things. But rap is different. You don't need to hold a note. You don't need any musical training. So that's one part. But I think the core of it is, it goes back to this childhood kink of mine, which is words. And I've shared this story with lots of my friends over the years. And I just like repeating this particular thing. I think that sort of just the fetish for words. And the longer it is, when I was growing up, that used to be it used to really fascinate me. I remember I was in class 8 or 9 and used to get the Deccan Herald home, and it used to have a section in the center which was world news and brief or something. Every day it would carry 3 little snippets about some random things happening in the world. Still remember in class 9, one day it carried one little thing about a Tamilian man. Okay? And as part of that little article, it had put down 3 words. Okay? A Tamilian man who had this, freaky memory or whatever, etc. That man could look at any word for like 5 or 10 seconds. That's it. Okay? He could just look at a word and immediately spell and pronounce the words forwards and backwards. Okay. And as part of this article, the newspaper had carried 3 words, which at that point in time, I had never seen words that so long and whatever else. And, there was no internet, dictionaries would not carry these words, etc. I was so fascinated with those 3 words that I think for the next 1 week, I just kept writing those words down and sort of pronouncing and spelling and doing all that. Not backwards, of course, but the regular way. So one was obviously, it said 28 letters was the longest. So it had supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, which is a very common word, which most people know. Then it was, I still don't know the right pronunciation for this, whether it was floccinaucinihilipilification or floccinaucinihilipilification. So both were 28 letters. And back then, how do you even corroborate? And that's the beauty of that era with no technology and internet. I remember going to the Central Library for, months on end, looking for these words in magazines, so on and so forth. And the third word was anti-disestablishmentarianism. So they were all sort of 28 letters and 31 letters. So for the longest time, I had these words and I have memorized it so much back then that I will go to my grave with nothing but these 5 words. Much later on, one day in some other magazine, I came across a word which is technically not a word because it's a noun. It's a medical term for a lung disease caused due to the inhalation of silicate dust, and that is 45 letters, which is pneumono-ultramicroscopico-silicovolcanoconiosis. And then many months later, in some other book, I came across another word which was 63 letters, and then I memorized that. So these are the 5 words, and this one is the scientific name for a small black butterfly which is found in South America, and that is Papiliocartigenum secrescens salbalmi apropi extremitati busularum. So these 5 words, 28, 28, 31, 45, and 63, I've been carrying around in my head. And so there was this fetish and fascination for words, Rap is something, it's a very difficult genre. Now that, and I've never heard rap. Like most people, and I'm talking about, obviously, I don't listen to Hindi rap because Hindi is not my language and I don't get the meaning and I struggle with it. Of course, I've been staying in the northern part of India for 25 years, but my Hindi is still bad. Kannada is my mother tongue, but I've stopped listening to Kannada songs. If I listen to Dr. Rajkumar, 1970s and 80s. So English is sort of where it lands. It is next to impossible to understand. It requires a lot of time, a lot of effort, etc. So all these years, I've never heard rap. If somebody would play rap, or if rap would play somewhere, etc., you like anybody else, you would just switch off. Okay, I mean, you'll switch to something else. It's not something. 1.5 years ago, completely by accident, I was driving and, the song changed on its own and some rap number started playing and I wanted to switch, but then I let it play for 2 minutes. I just liked what I heard. And since then, it's become such an obsession. So now I spend a lot of time. Of course, this is a side project. There's nothing to it. But it's just opened up such a phenomenal world for me that I spend all my time. I've become the biggest fan. And now obviously, since I've spent time, it is the greatest genre of music. The writing it is on par. Maybe it'll probably beat every other genre of music and kind of writing. That is the level of thinking. So that's what I'm tripping on currently. In fact, I'm working on a hip hop talk for a friend, for his organization, putting it together. It's already taken me 2 months. It might take me another month to put this presentation together because there is so much material and there are so many parts to it. But so going back to why that nobody listens to rap and says, "Oh, I love the music," and etc. Because for most people, you don't even hear the music. It's just somebody, hundreds of words delivered at a pace in double quick time, where you don't understand anything other than the expletives. Even when you look at the lyrics, you don't get it because their accent is so different. The way they break their sentences, everything is so different. But to me, that fascination of what the hell is this person singing is what got me into rap 1.5 years ago.
Okay.
So now I'm completely swimming in that ocean, deep diving.
Okay. So why don't we hear something from you? Any rap number which you can?
So it's like this, Tuhin. Like I said, I can't sing, so on and so forth. I sing for my own pleasure. But this rap, because it's got nothing to do with musical ability, which I have none of, but I like singing. I sing along to songs. So therefore, in my car, I'm playing somebody or the other, and some song is playing on, and then it takes me most songs. It takes me anywhere between a couple of months and maybe about 500 to 600 attempts to get every word sort of pat. So 500, 600 attempts. And if somebody thinks that I'm being very over dramatic with 500 or 600 times, I can now break it down because I've been doing it for a year and a half. I can exactly break it down and say why it'll take an average Indian, not an American, of course, why it'll take an average Indian 500 to 600 attempts to memorize one song without missing a word. So because you need that music, you need that beat. Of course, you get the instrument version, you get the -1 tracks for most of it on YouTube. I tried doing it, and that's because you still, all said and done, it sounds really fuck all if you try and speak like them, but it's not natural. Okay? And therefore, your Indian accent, your South Indian accent, it comes out. And it just doesn't sound. So therefore, I realized that the way to enjoy, for me at least, is I play the song is playing and I'm singing along to it. So
why don't you sing along? Yeah, why don't you sing along? Maybe put your headphone in your earphone.
Okay. So you will not ideally.
We will not hear the music. Yeah. Okay.
Ideally, I should be playing it on YouTube and singing along as part of this call, but then there's going to be some whatever copyright infringement and stuff. So let me do one thing. One little song, one portion of a song.
Fair.
I'll just hear it and sing along. I've never done this. I don't know. I might be too loud or whatever. Doesn't matter. But let me.
We'll also enjoy it. You enjoy. We'll definitely enjoy it.
This is one of the recent numbers that I've been tripping on. It's by Kanye West. And I'll probably pick it up midway and sing verse 2 and verse 3, which is back to back. Absolutely stunning number. Most of the numbers are very stunning so masterfully written and whatever else. And this also is, hip hop. They do a lot of sampling. This one, they've taken the iconic James Bond "Diamonds Are Forever" and the iconic Lady Shirley Bassey, the original track. They've taken that and then he's constructed this song. These two verses is like a half-an-hour Pilates class. That's the energy and madness. I mean, one needs to get into the lyrics to understand the beauty of it, but let me just at least do these 2 verses.
Yeah, fair enough.
Just pick it up from. After this, I listen how it sounds because I will not be. I was sick about awards, couldn't nobody cure me. Only player that got robbed, but kept all his jewelry. Lisha Keys tried to talk some sense at him. 30 minutes later, seen as no convincing him. What more could you ask for? The international asshole who complain about what he is owed and throw a tantrum like he is 3 years old. You gotta love it though. Somebody still speak from his soul and wouldn't change by the change or the game or the fame. When he came in the game, he made his own lane. Now all I need is you all to pronounce my name. It's Kanye, but some of my plaques, they still say Kane. God family in the Deacon, folk from Motown. Back in the shy, them folks ain't from Motown. Life moving too fast, I need to slow down. Girl ain't give me no ass, you need to go down. My father Ben said I need Jesus, so he took me to church and let the water wash over my Caesar. The preacher said we need leaders. Right then, my body got still like a paraplegic. You know who you call, you got the message, then leave it. The rocks stand tall and you would never believe it. Take your diamonds and throw them up like a bulimic. Yeah, the beat cold, but the flow's anemic. After debris settles and the dust gets swept off, Big K pick up where Young Hove left off. Rival magazines wrote Kanye West off. I drop my new shit, it sound like the best of. A&R's looking like we messed up. Grammy night, damn right, we got dressed up. Bottle after bottle till we got messed up in the studio with really dough. Yeah, he next up. People ask me, is I'm gonna give my chain back. That'll be the same day I gave the game back. You know the next question, dog, yo, wait, damn man. Distract the Indian dance to bring our rain back. What's up with you and J, man? Are you all okay, man? They pray for the death of a dynasty like amen. Right here stands amen with the power to make a diamond with his bare hands. Diamonds are forever.
Wow. Wow. I think it was awesome. Though I have not heard the original one, but I really enjoyed your version of it, and I think it will be as close to the original as you said. So
whenever you find time to in, and I'll send you the link. Just I mean, there are hundreds of songs, of course, but just I will send you the link. Here, this Kanye West's Diamonds Are Forever. Like that, there are hundreds of stunning tracks, but this one, since we did this, you should listen to it.
Definitely. Fair enough. Okay, we will come to the last segment. A couple of more questions to understand you a little better. So now, if you're looking at relaxing, will it be with your with Noodle, who is a pet dog at home, or will it be a beer going out with your friends in a pub? Which one will you prefer?
Definitely not friends in a pub. Yeah. Any day, ideally, perfect would be a beer at home with Noodle. You know, I guess, you know, you're at that stage in life where it's just tiring. Yeah? Even with close friends. Yeah, once in a while you catch up with someone, but if you give me a choice, I can be at home in my space for months on end with my dog around, with lots of things, you know, some writing and listening to music and doing whatever else. I will not get bored. I can be at home by myself for months on end and not feel so.
Okay, the next one, I think not only a question for me, but for many girls who will be watching this show is, how do you maintain yourself so well, fit, handsome, smart?
Rubbish. No.
I'm not hitting on you. I was talking from the girl's point of view. So,
no, I'm not. You know that. You know, thankfully, you know, some people have the tendency to put on weight, which I've not had. I've always been a very, you know, sort of medium-built guy from college onwards.
Is it a genetic thing? Your father also was similar?
My father was also, you know, medium built, you know, right. Some 5'7" and medium built. That's one bit. I'm not a big foodie at all. Okay, so I don't. Again, same thing for months on end. You give me the same sambar rice, curd rice. That's what I pretty much eat. Okay, I'm happy. Every meal is. I'm not a big eater. I'm not a foodie. I don't eat too much, and I eat on time. I've always done that, but nothing. All this, I guess, you know, for most people, you know, you're in between 15, 20 years of heavy corporate life, everything goes for a toss. Okay? and even more so in a field like advertising because of the number of late nights, so on and so forth. So I've never exercised, never done anything for a very, very long time. But yeah, now in the last 2 years, I try and walk for an hour, maybe 5 days a week. Period. I guess a big factor is the food habit, which has always been very bare, vegetarian, South Indian kind of thing. So.
Okay, and that brings us to the last question. So I'm not sure whether people in advertising ever retire, but in case you finally decide to retire one day, where will you want to maybe settle? Will it be a big city like Gurgaon where you have stayed for a long period, or will you maybe want to go back to somewhere like Shimoga and stay back again and relive your childhood memories there?
That'll be, one part is clear to him, definitely not a city. Definitely done with. City life is just too boring, yeah. So not a city. I would love to go back and live in a place like Shimoga. I'm not sure whether I'll end up doing it. I still have a lot of childhood friends there. That's really, that place is sort of blessed. When I say that place, not just Shimoga, that entire region, large parts of Karnataka, and especially that Malnad belt, it's really gorgeous and beautiful. So first is small town, for sure. These days, most small towns, if you don't have to be in active work, every day, you can still sit somewhere and do something. You've got all the technology and stuff like that. So it's definitely going to be a small town. Whether it's going to be Shimoga or not, I'm not sure. There are many other considerations. But yeah, the top of the mind answer for most people seems to be Goa. So I mean, that's like an option. I don't know, but not a city for sure.
Okay. Okay, great. So I think it was wonderful that we could catch up close to 1 hour, and I think we would have continued the discussion, and maybe we need to get back. There are so many other things which we could have discussed about Zindagi and about your suffer, which is there. But thanks a lot, Suspi, for taking the time out, and let's be in touch. And I really keep on enjoying on your Facebook when you are uploading some of your rap videos which you are putting up there. Yeah. So keep on enjoying life, and also keep on motivating us to enjoy life the way you are doing it.
Thanks a lot, Tuhin, for honestly, I have all the time, and thanks for having this chat with me. It's wonderful. I have to tell you this, and this is not you pat my back, I pat your back. I not enough fight sometime. Most of us in the batch, we all thought you're the most unlikely person to be doing this, and you keep doing a lot of things, which is fabulous. You've written 3 or 4 books yourself. This is not, you do so many side projects, okay, which is phenomenal. Okay, so thanks for having this chat with me. And obviously, we'll be in touch. And this rap thing, like I said, I think I'll keep rapping till I fucking die. Okay, it's just midlife crisis turning to midlife delight.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Thanks a lot. Bye. Take care and be safe. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tuhin. Thanks, Tom. Thanks.